Live from the heart of the nation's capital, this is a Jim Acosta Show special report.
All right, welcome to the Jim Acosta Show, and we are about 3 months away from the midterm elections in America. We're counting them down here on the program. Big election last night in Michigan. We're going to be talking about that in just a few moments with Democratic strategist, former Obama White House communications director, Dan Pfeiffer. But got a very special guest to kick off the show as we get started here. TMZ's founder and host, Harvey Levin, is with us. And Harvey's shot is okay? Is it a little frozen right now? Are we okay? Harvey, are you there? Oh, Harvey might not be there. Let's see. Well, we'll have to get Harvey back in here, but I don't think he is in the room at the moment. We had him as we got started here, but he is not there right now. So we'll have to get him back in here. One of the reasons why I reached out to Harvey, and we reached out to Harvey, is we saw the very impassioned statement that he made about Dr. Anthony Fauci. When Dr. Fauci testified up on Capitol Hill last week, he obviously came under withering attack from Republicans, in particular, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who accused Dr. Fauci of doing all sorts of things. And then Harvey Levin, he's really made a big splash here in Washington recently. His TMZ crews are all over Capitol Hill these days. So we'll talk to Harvey about that in just a few moments. There's Harvey right there. He's back with us. Wait, I don't hear Harvey. I don't have Harvey's audio. Now we don't have Harvey's audio. That's okay. We're doing our best to get him connected here. I don't hear Harvey, but maybe we'll hear him shortly here. This happens on occasion. It's called live television, live streaming. Harvey knows all about this. He's a professional. But as I was saying, and as we get Harvey's text sorted out here, we will in just a moment. We were literally just talking to each other and having a great conversation before we got started here. Harvey made a very impassioned statement about Dr. Anthony Fauci. As a matter of fact, why don't we play that right now and play some of that, and then we'll get Harvey's text.
I have not used TMZ's YouTube channel to vent personal feelings about issues, but I'm going to do that today. Watching Anthony Fauci before a congressional hearing taking the Fifth Amendment is just one of the most heartbreaking things I have seen in government in my lifetime. And this is something we need to reckon with. That I'm going to say up front, I have problems the way the CDC handled COVID. I think that they did damage to children, to adults, and I don't think they did it maliciously. I think they did it because they were using their judgment and were overprotective, and I think at times overstated things they said they knew but really didn't. And I have personal problems with the way that COVID was handled. That said, Anthony Fauci, over a period of decades, has been an amazing public servant. In the 80s, I had many friends who died of AIDS, a horrible, painful death. And I had friends who lived because of Anthony Fauci, because he was willing to look at experimental drugs in a different way than they had looked at them before. And
well, and that right there is just a sample of what Harvey said in his statement. He went on to accuse the Republicans, and I share these thoughts as well, of just full-blown McCarthyism. And Fauci pled the Fifth. That came under a lot of scrutiny. Having known Anthony Fauci for many years and seeing the attacks that he's been going through for, the last several years now, it doesn't surprise me too much that he took the fifth and decided not to speak, despite the fact that he received a pardon from Joe Biden. He knows that the Republican attack machine is going to continue to come after him. But a lot of this has seeped into our culture. And one of the things that you're seeing is not just people up on Capitol Hill, people in Washington going after Dr. Anthony Fauci. It's people like Aaron Rodgers, the football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I guess that's the team he's with now. It looks like Harvey's getting set up right now. Let's let Harvey get set up for a few more moments. I do want to show this clip of Aaron Rodgers. He was on the Pat McAfee show on ESPN, popping off on Dr. Fauci. Let's play that.
Here's the pass.
I'm going to plead the fifth.
Okay. Okay.
Like
Gotta
that.
love that guy.
Okay.
Like that absolute coward, Tony Fauci. Absolute coward.
Yeah.
There, it's back,
Are
baby.
you kidding me?
Yeah. 111.
You got a
times.
pardon and you're in front and you pleaded over 100 times
Yeah.
at the White House. What are you scared of, Tony?
Yeah.
I thought you were the science.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you were I am science, and you get up there and you can't answer a question.
Yeah.
What are we
it,
doing?
baby.
And how much time did the network spend at that? How much time did they spend on my responses every week, on my vaccination status, on Taylor and Travis's wedding?
Yeah, if only Aaron Rodgers had brought that kind of fire, that kind of fight to his time at the New York Jets, maybe things might have turned out differently with his career. But it sounds like Harvey can hear me now. Do we have both audio and video? Harvey, how are you?
I got you. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. It was probably just
No, it's
gremlins
just,
in the machine.
we just it's the electric bill. It was a lot of money. We just came up short. Sorry.
I hear you. And times are tough over at TMZ as I have seen it.
Yeah,
as of
and
late,
by the way, I totally disagree with Aaron Rodgers, and we can get into it.
please.
But you got to give the guy his due. I don't know if you've read Out of the Darkness. It's the biography about Aaron.
Yeah.
But he was you got to give him his due. He's a great quarterback.
Great. Hey, he was a great quarterback. I mean, he had a good season last year, not so good with the Jets.
I know.
And he peddles a lot of conspiracy theory nonsense when it comes to COVID. It's not my cup of tea. A lot of times you hear on the far right, Harvey, why don't they just shut up and play?
No, it is the LeBron shut up and dribble comment.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, people in sports have an absolute right. Ronald Reagan, was a sports announcer and he became president. Yeah. So people have a right. It's just Aaron Rodgers doesn't know what he's talking about. And for Aaron Rodgers, well, number one, for him to say, well, he was pardoned. Well, Aaron, I'm sorry, but this would be the equivalent of me calling plays at the NFL. You don't know what you're talking about. When you're pardoned, it's not for what you do in the future. It's what you've done in the past. And he's not protected by what he says in Congress. So the pardon's irrelevant. And the idea of saying, well, he took the fifth, he's a coward. No, he'd be an idiot not to take the fifth because Rand Paul was out to get him. And anything he would have said would have landed him before the Justice Department. So Aaron Rodgers, who I would argue deceived people when he said, I've been immunized, and people assume that meant, oh, well, I got vaccinated when in fact he didn't. And again, that's his right. I don't know that he's in a position to criticize the way he is.
Right. And, this all takes us back to all the arguments that we had during COVID. Yeah. Okay. Aaron Rodgers, you're a professional athlete. You're in very good shape. You probably are not in the high risk category after you get COVID, that you might die from COVID. I mean, that's just common sense. But what about the people who play in other positions on the team? Are you going to get them sick with COVID? What about the people who work in the locker room or, work for the football organization? Are you going to get them sick with COVID? I mean, again, this just goes back to all of that stuff. Not that we want to go down that rabbit hole.
And you know what, Jim, I know that argument and I agree with a lot of it.
Yeah.
I agree with the idea that there are people who really needed protection, but there's something else. And I think we just got to be honest about this. When I was a kid, polio was a thing. And there were a lot of people who were devastated by polio. And, I got the polio vaccine when I was a kid. But the reality is polio, the vaccine had side effects. There were some people who actually died from it, and there were side effects of it. And there are generally side effects on every drug. And, this sounds harsh, but it is a cost benefit analysis. And you have to figure out how much cost you're willing to pay for the benefit. And that's the way we should be looking at this. It's not always 0, 100. It's almost never 0, 100. And there's going to be some cost because everything has adverse consequences. But the issue is, how do you balance it out? And I think we have to admit the COVID vaccine did cause complications with people. It did harm some people, but you have to look at cost benefit. That's the way everything works in life.
Yeah, and we had Dr. Peter Hotez, who is a vaccine scientist, on the other day. He was citing studies that estimate 3 million plus people were saved in this country because we had vaccines. Right. And
that's the benefit.
These are the questions that Dr. Anthony Fauci and other top government scientists were grappling with during the COVID pandemic. And I was really happy to see you defend Dr. Fauci because at the end of the day, what are we going to do? We're just going to have any Tom, Dick, or Harry fly our airplanes or operate on your chest after you have a heart attack at the hospital? No, you have to have experts in important positions. And Dr. Fauci was the foremost expert in the world, and he was helping this country get through COVID. But Harvey, in your video we played at the top as we were getting things going here, you also gave Fauci, and he deserves all the credit for this as well, for the advancements that were made in fighting AIDS during the 1980s.
Yeah. As I said a week or so ago, I had a lot of friends who died from AIDS, and there are people I know who are living today because he fast-tracked certain drugs that were experimental, and it saved their lives. So look, again, I want to be real about this. Personally, I did have some problems with the way COVID was handled. Mm-hmm. And I think children especially really suffered as a result of some of the policies. And there was a degree of bullying. And, you were at CNN at the time. And I got to say, I watched you and CNN all the time. And there was this element of, if you disagreed with them, that you were somehow traitorous. And I'm not saying that CNN did it, but there was an atmosphere of that you couldn't dare question, where it came from and what precautions you should be taking, that you were somehow an idiot for doing it. And I think that intolerance was a problem. But that said, I think, to reduce Anthony Fauci to looking like a criminal is just abhorrent.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And as for the coverage, I think we were all trying to figure this out in real time. And there was so much disinformation that was being spread, in particular by the president of the United States at that time, who was talking about how you could maybe inject disinfectants into your body or bring light bulbs into your body or whatever it was. He was also saying things like it'll be like a miracle, it'll just disappear and that sort of thing. There was so much disinformation that was being fought against. I remember when I was doing my show, I would just try to concentrate on having as many scientists and doctors and experts on as much as possible, just to make sure people were getting reliable information. So they weren't listening to people say, oh, you could just use ivermectin, or you could use this pill, or, all these crackpot ideas that had no science backing them up. But there's that. But, but it was just full-blown McCarthyism. When you watched that hearing, they were just going after him to score political points.
Yeah, and again, Rand Paul has been transparent about this for several years now, that he wants Anthony Fauci in prison. And if that's the backdrop to this, and that somebody can be prosecuted, for arranging seashells, they could figure out how to prosecute Anthony Fauci for whatever he said. Yeah. And it's fine if a case gets filed and then it's ultimately dismissed. But what everybody has to realize is, in between, you have to hire a lawyer. You get trashed in the media. You're the object of scorn and ridicule, and your life is never going to be the same, even if you end up winning and the case is dismissed. I mean, look at David Hearn. So, the idea of, going before Congress and saying, look, I know what I'm saying is right and I will withstand it even if he prosecutes me. That's not real life.
Right. And let's talk about what TMZ has been doing in DC, because Harvey, I mean, you guys have taken this Capitol by storm. You got crews all over Capitol Hill. I think you had a
Jim, I
yeah.
got to stop you.
Please.
We got two guys on the card table.
Well, it looks like crews all over Capitol Hill. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you guys are just hustling that much. You had a reporter the other day asking, I think it was John Ossoff, about his BDE. I thought that was a very interesting moment. But then you also have reporters who are chasing down folks like Bernie Moreno and asking him about this horrific situation with his son-in-law, who is a member of Congress, Max Miller, and accused of abuse in his family, domestic abuse. Let's play that clip, because I thought, this was just an example of you guys hustling out there.
Did the lawyer for Max Miller apologize to you?
No, he did not.
Do you believe that Max Miller should resign from Congress right now?
Did you read my statement?
You said he's unfit to serve Congress.
Max,
I did not. I said absolutely.
Max-
He shouldn't serve in Congress. They need serious help.
Yeah.
That's exactly what my statement says. My statement speaks for itself.
he said that you're in response to your statement that it was to protect from your own circus. To that you say what?
It's the ramblings of a madman.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means.
Harvey, what do you
telling Trump?
Harvey, what do you think of that particular scandal right now? What do you make of that scandal right now?
Look, I mean, there are 3 women now, who have made allegations against him. And I don't know. I mean, one of the things that I hesitate to do is draw conclusions without really understanding, what it's all about. I haven't read the declarations. I know what the allegations are, but I have seen enough in my career where things are not what they seem, that I'm slow to judge something like this. And I know a lot of people are already judging, and they're saying 3 women are saying it, they can't all be lying. And I get it. And that may be true, but I just don't know. And, and I think the ethics committee should rightly be looking at this and, coming up with some conclusions here. But, I just feel like everybody jumps to conclusions the second allegations are made. And that doesn't mean the allegations aren't true, but I think where our mindset is now, they're guilty, and then all of a sudden, it's sort of like when a prosecutor comes out with an indictment or a charge, and people read it, it's the strongest case you could possibly read from their point of view. And people read it and say, oh, they got to be guilty. And then all of a sudden you have a trial and you hear a defense that you never even thought of before, and it may sway the jury. So, until you really get granular on it, what do I think of it? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and we should note, Max Miller has been, he's been accused of these things before. It wasn't just this case with his
3 women. Yeah,
exactly. One of them being Stephanie Grisham, the former White House press secretary. And I guess since you were challenging me a little bit on our coverage at my old place, I'll say, what's the thinking behind asking John Ossoff if he has BDE?
I thought I loved that Charlie asked him that question. And I'll tell you what the thinking is. The way I see it, the biggest criticism of the Democrat Party among Democrats is they don't have the balls to stand up for what they believe in and fight what they don't believe in. And BDE is the response to that. And there are a lot of people on social media, certainly, who are saying John Ossoff carries himself with BDE, and that's what they want. So this is not like this abstract, silly thing. The reality is that's what people in the Democrat Party have been asking for. And if John Ossoff embodies that, then take that seriously, because that's what people say is lacking. So I think it was a great question.
Well, Harvey, we appreciate the energy you bring. And that you are now bringing to Washington, D.C. There was a movie line somewhere along, this town could use an enema. I think that's kind of the thinking. Maybe that's the thinking behind you injecting your folks into D.C.
I'm not thrilled with the metaphor, Jim.
But I mean, honestly, I do like that you guys are chasing lawmakers to elevators. I mean, we just need more of that in DC. And so, kudos to you guys. And Harvey, I'm glad we worked out all the technical stuff. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Good to see you.
We'll see.
All right. That's Harvey Levin, TMZ. And they're shaking things up here in Washington. As Harvey said, with just a couple of guys, and it looks like some cell phone cameras, but they're doing a great job here in DC. Always appreciate Harvey coming on, and kudos to him for standing up for Dr. Fauci. I thought that was very important as well. We should also note there's some other news going on, including a huge political development in the state of Michigan. In Michigan last night, Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed, defeated a Democratic establishment Congresswoman, Haley Stevens, to win the Democratic nomination to run for the Senate in the state of Michigan. And it's got a lot of people talking. And I thought one of the smartest people out there to talk to about this is Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama at the White House. And I guess as I annoyed Harvey Levin, I probably also annoyed you from time to time, Dan. I guess it's supposed to mean I'm doing something right, but I'm sure people will disagree. Dan, good to see you.
Jim, good to see you.
Your thoughts on last night? I saw your tweet about this, and you said the Michigan primary is finally over, even though the margin was very close. The fact that Abdul Al-Sayed overcame $60 million in super PAC ads in the entire Democratic establishment is an incredible feat, but he has a lot of work to do. Here are some thoughts on what he has to do, and you ran through those thoughts. So rather than me read all of that, why don't you tell us and what you thought about last night?
Sure. Everyone went into last night because of the polls, which were once again very wrong. Assumed that Abdul would run away with this. He had a 10-point lead in the polling average. He'd been up by as many as 19 in a poll that came out a few days before the election. Ended up being a nail biter, just about 1 point, went till early Wednesday morning. And that kind of has infected how people think about it, because the expectation was he wins easy, then he wins a close race, so it's a disappointment. But I think it's worth taking a step back and recognizing here you have a candidate who is running to be the first Muslim senator, who was facing $60 million in special interest ads. He was outspent 11-1, taking on the entire Democratic establishment. Chuck Schumer, the DSCC, the governor of the state, the attorney general of the state, the retiring senator, the most prominent former senator, and he was able to pull it off. That's a huge deal. Yeah. But now the general election is here, and he's got to find a way to win, because there's no path to a Democratic Senate majority without winning Michigan. It's a seat we absolutely have to hold. And, and I think, and we can talk about it, as you look at it, it's not an easy race. There are challenges there, and he's got some work to do to get this done. But I do believe he can win.
And what did you? I do want to talk about the AIPAC thing. I think it's very important. But the fact that there seemed to be sort of this, nonstop effort from the Democratic establishment to, we have to, stop Abdul Al-Sayed at all costs, and it just got. And Rachel Maddow, I think on MS Now, was saying it was spicy. Others were saying it was ugly and nasty and so on. I was watching it, and it sort of reminded me a little bit of the Obama-Hillary battle back in 2008. Right. Yep. And I sort of thought people were getting carried away with this. But your thoughts on that, and why the establishment was so pissed at this?
I think there was a belief from Schumer, the DSCC, a lot of folks in Washington, that Abdul Sayed was a uniquely vulnerable candidate because he was more left, had said some things about, in 2020 that could easily be demagogued. He had campaigned with Hassan Piker. They believed that he was vulnerable and that the better candidate was Haley Stevens. Yeah, I think there is when you look back on it, I think that it's very possible the DSCC picked the wrong candidate. Picking Michigan as a state with the largest Arab American population in the country. It is a state that birthed the uncommitted movement, emanating from the Biden policy. Right. And so they looked at the Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand looked at this race, and to decide that the best chance to win the primary, because that's what you have to do here, because they're trying to stop Abdul, was one of the most pro-Israel Democrats in the Congress, was a mistake, because her support for unconditional aid in Israel, the endorsement by AIPAC, her long-time relationship with AIPAC, they had funded her primary challenge in 2022, all I think became a burden. And it's very possible that a different Democrat would have been able to beat Abdul today. But here's where we are. Abdul's here. I think he, as I said, I think he can win. I think any candidate, either Haley Stevens or Abdul, was going to have some challenges here. First step is we have to unite the party. And I think I was pretty worried about this before this morning. This was a pretty contemptuous primary, both between the candidates themselves and the supporters of the candidates. But as of this morning, Abdul, he was a gracious winner. He was complimentary of his Stevens. Stevens called Abdul. She has come out in support of him. Whitmer has endorsed Abdul. Mallory McMorrow, who was the third candidate in this race, and stayed neutral after she dropped out, introduced Abdul at his victory speech today. I think at least there's work to do to unite the voters and persuade the voters, but the political elites here are doing the right thing and really seem to be locked in and understand what the challenge is, which is we have to elect Abdul al-Sayed and defeat Mike Rogers.
Well, a lot of that sounds better than what happened with Obama and Hillary. Which
we got there now. That's the thing.
He made her Secretary of State. Yeah,
she became Secretary of State. I've been thinking you're exactly right. This had a lot of the contours of that race, and they did that event in Unity, New Hampshire, right after the election. That was the beginning. In similar fashion, Clinton gave the nominating speech for Obama at the convention, and they worked together, and Obama was able to win a huge victory that year because everyone understood how important it was to win the White House. And I think you see a similar focus and big picture thinking from Democrats this time around, which is good.
And Dan, how do we untangle the Israel part of this? Because I saw Abdul gave a terrific speech last night, and he said some very gracious things about reaching out to Jewish voters in Michigan and making sure they understand where he's coming from. But AIPAC, spending millions upon millions of dollars to try to knock him out. And now they put out a statement saying that they're going to back Mike Rogers. Which is okay. I guess you're just going to, that's how you're going to start the next day. Okay, there you go. But how do you deal with this?
Yeah. So I think it is worth understanding that while much of the discussion about the change in public opinion on Israel has focused on Democrats, and there has been a big change among Democrats, the change among independents has been just as big among the change of Democrats. 2/3 of independents oppose or think we're giving too much money to Israel. They feel 2/3 are more sympathetic, majorities are more sympathetic to the Palestinians and the Israelis in this sort of tracking measure that Gallup's done for decades now.
Yeah.
And so his position on Israel, particularly on the question of unconditional aid, is very much in the mainstream for swing voters in Michigan. The issue is, and it's worth understanding that Israel right now is a top issue in Democratic primaries. It's top of the list for a lot of voters, or it's near the top. And it's a litmus test in some questions, particularly as it relates to AIPAC. And that is not true as you widen the electorate out. And so while his position is right, I think he's going to have to show that he's as much or more focused on affordability, pocketbook issues, healthcare, as he is on that issue. And it was interesting today in his victory speech, Abdul, instead of speaking about aid to Israel, he spoke about taxpayer dollars going abroad and broadening beyond one country. And he has said, I think this is going to be a very popular position, that he opposes unconditional aid to any country. And I think broadening it there and having a little bit of a progressive America first agenda could be very effective in Michigan in particular.
And how do you deal with some of the hard feelings on this Israel-Palestinian question? Because, there are the arguments. I mean, there's a lot of ad hominem attacks, and there's just a lot of, personal things that are being said. And if you are critical of Israel, you're perceived as being anti-Semitic in some circles. And if you're critical of a Muslim candidate like Abdul al-Sayed, it's a lot Islamophobia. And what do you do to take down the temperature? I thought it was interesting that you were coming out and saying stuff, and Ben Rhodes was coming out and saying stuff. And I thought, well, maybe Barack Obama is going to come out and have an event and try to get to the bottom of this. And then I could probably hear the Obama people saying, you can't have Barack Obama swoop in to solve all these problems all the time, guys.
That is correct. I have not spoken to Barack Obama about this.
Okay.
So I say that I feel like
thinking like a political reporter.
It's an absolutely fair question to ask.
Yeah.
There are lots of Jewish Democrats in Michigan who agree with Abdul on 99% of the issues.
Yeah.
And they have a disagreement here, or they don't fully understand his full position. And it's very important for him to, because I think in this happens in a primary campaign, but I think this is particularly true of his campaign, is you get kind of a my way or the highway approach, right? And especially like you're with us or you're against us.
Right.
And now you have to go get a bunch of people who want to vote for you, but are skeptical. And you have to come to them being open to listen to their concerns, to find ways not to change your principles or cynically tack to the center, but to seem open to compromise and agreement. And, I think this is going to be a really important part, because he has to do it on this issue. He's got to find leaders in the community, and maybe Haley Stevens can be helpful in this, who will vouch for him, who can speak to him. Different state, different political environment, but this is something Zoran Mamdani did and worked very hard at, finding Jewish leaders and rabbis who would support him and speak on his behalf, and going to synagogues and other events. And and I think it's very important for Abdul to do that as well.
Yeah. And obviously Donald Trump is, already trying to make mischief with this. He put out a Truth Social post, which is hard to understand because it's so unhinged.
Yeah.
But he, again, is accusing Detroit of being a corrupt voting area. It's strictly third world. He's drifting into his usual racism when it comes to talking about big cities like Detroit and so on. But he's already sort of laying the groundwork for it seems to me, not honoring the results of this particular race if Abdul al-Sayed comes out and beats Mike Rogers, even handily. Where are you on dealing with the Trump and all of this?
I think, look, Trump talking about campaigning for involving himself in this race is only a net positive for the Democrats.
Yeah.
Trump he obviously won the state 2 of the last 3 times. It was a 50-50 state essentially in 2024. It is not 2024. Trump's approval rating is under 40 in most polls in Michigan. This is a state that is probably 6 to 8 points more Democratic now than it was then. And so Trump is unpopular. He is a drag on Mike Rogers. Here's the thing about the election. He is going to, if any Democrat wins, he is going to say they cheated. Like that. Right. He is going to do that. As I like to point out sometimes, he said the election was rigged in 2016 when he won. So right. It's like he's going to say that. The Michigan is a state with a Democratic governor and Democratic Secretary of State. He has no role in validating these results, certifying these results. All he can do is post on Truth Social about it, and it's not going to affect whether Abdul al-Sayed gets to be in the Senate or not.
Yeah, and then I also think, Dan, it is worth noting. I think Abdul al-Sayed is a pretty talented. He seems like a pretty talented politician. I don't know. Do we have the soundbite where I think he made some comments? Was it today about Mike Rogers? It might have been a morning event.
And that's exactly what Michiganders up and down the state showed. 12,000 volunteers knocking nearly 10,000 doors a day to defeat an unprecedented amount of outside money, $70 million. But right now, as bitter and as divisive and as cynical as the campaign against us might have been, I want us to realize that there is so much more that unites us now. Because the campaign that Mike Rogers and Donald Trump and their GOP MAGA allies are launching is already more bitter. All you got to do is look at the ads you're already watching on TV, started today. They think that you want to use my whole name against me. Mike, listen, man, if you can't say the name, it's Abdurrahman, keep the name out your damn mouth.
There you go. Echoes of Will Smith, I think it was there a little bit.
Yes.
But he seems, and I noticed that I think the Senate Majority PAC Twitter account put out a video, and it shows Abdul al-Sayed giving the valedictorian speech at University of Michigan or something like that. I should have played that today. Maybe I'll play it tomorrow. He's been a talented public speaker for a long time.
Yeah, he is a supremely talented communicator. I know Abdul. He had a podcast with Crooked Media for many years. He's very smart. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He is an incredibly talented communicator, and he's talented in 2 ways. And you need to do both of these in this day and age. The first is he's a good messenger. He knows what to say. He says it well. He says it in ways that people understand. But as importantly, he understands how the modern media works, and he is out there all the time. He is doing everything. He's doing podcasts. He's doing videos. He's on Morning Joe. He's doing local TV interviews. He's doing streams. He's omnipresent. And that is a huge advantage. Mike Rogers is not as bad as some Republicans, but not as talented, not as savvy in the ways of the modern media. And so this is going to be one of his advantages in this race. And there are some things he's got to change from his primary campaign. The one thing I hope he does not change is this real willingness to go everywhere, talk to everyone, be out there all the time. Because I think that's really important.
Yeah. Oh, and I wasn't straight up with you. One last finally question. This question of DSA, and we should note, if I'm not mistaken, Abdul is not DSA. He's simply progressive.
Yeah.
Do you worry about some of these candidates out there who sound just a little too out there in some of the things that they have said and, that they're on record saying?
I think lots of people said lots of things, tweeted lots of things in their past, particularly around 2020.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you answer it now? I do have great confidence in Abdul's ability to handle those questions, to say, I believe this then, or I said this then. The circumstances have changed. My mind has changed. No, I do not support defunding the police or whatever the thing is. He is not a member of DSA. Trump has already called him a communist today. He had some weird distinction where Haley Stevens was a socialist and Abdul was a communist. I don't really know what that means. They called Barack Obama a socialist in 2008. That's going to happen for any Democrat. And so you have to be deft. You have to be smart. But I really do have confidence in Abdul's ability to navigate some of these turbulent waters going forward.
Interesting. All right, Dan, great to see you. Pod Save America. Obviously, I don't need to plug you guys. You guys are huge and everything, but always good to talk to you. Really appreciate it and hope to do this soon.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Good to see you. Thanks, Dan. And I think we do have this comment. Trump was on Fox last night and he was getting softball questions. I think it's from Trace Gallagher, who is, you're not going to do Jesse or Sean Hannity or Lauren. You go down the ugly tree over at Fox News, you end up with this bozo. But anyway, I think Trump was talking to him last night about socialism.
One thing I said the other day for the first time ever, never thought of it, but you go to these cities that are taken over by the socialists and the communists, they're always filthy dirty. They're disgusting. They're always dirty. And, I'm a clean person, and people I know are clean. They like that. And you are. I know you very well. You're very clean. But they're aside from crime, aside from all of the other problems, no jobs, no anything, no money, they're always filthy, disgusting, dirty. And that's what you'll get.
I mean, first of all, there are lots of different ways to go with these nakedly racist comments from Donald Trump. He talks about cities being dirty and so on, despite the fact that he lived in New York City most of his adult life, still has his apartment there, still goes there. But putting that hypocrisy to the side, which, it's very 2018, 2019 of me to point that out. Is Donald Trump clean? Did anybody see the video? I should have gotten I wrestled with whether I should have gotten this video today, and I didn't get this video today because I have just come back from vacation, from my honeymoon, and I'm trying to be a good boy. I'm trying not to tempt the forces of the universe by going overboard ridiculously right away as soon as I come back. But has anybody seen the video of Donald Trump at Lindsey Graham's funeral, and he's sitting there in the pews, and something happens on his face? He gets a look of extreme relaxation on his face, and then behind him is a guy who looks like he has smelled the bottom of a dumpster outside of LaGuardia Airport at 2 a.m. And I can't imagine why he's making that look on his face of smelling something extremely unpleasant. But he caught a whiff of something, and he was sitting behind the president of the United States. And I only bring this up because Donald Trump calling himself really clean, I'm sorry, I have to laugh at that. And I'm laughing at it now, and I'm going to be laughing at this when the show is over. But, please, Donald Trump, you are not clean. You never have been clean. And I mean, there are other ways of looking at clean, like being corrupt. That's certainly not squeaky clean. When it comes to sketchy stock trades, that's certainly not squeaky clean. When it comes to fleecing your own supporters to the tune of billions of dollars and then making that in sketchy crypto money, that is not squeaky clean. Just the other day, it was reported that the Capital One Bank, what's in your wallet, which I have not been paid to say that, they apparently had money laundering concerns when it comes to Donald Trump. That is certainly not clean. This is a dirty guy. This is a very dirty guy. So when he goes around talking about cities being dirty and not clean, maybe he should be looking at himself in the mirror, or maybe looking at other parts of his anatomy that may not be so squeaky clean, and maybe take care of your cleanliness, Donald Trump, not just the physical cleanliness, not just the hygiene of this, which I know appears to be a challenge for you these days. But you're certainly not clean, not by any stretch, when it comes to the way you've been fleecing this country, the way you have unleashed, as I've been describing it, an ocean of corruption in Washington, D.C. And so, yeah, when Donald Trump says he's squeaky clean, he is anything but. But in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Really appreciate Harvey Levin for standing by. Check him and his team out over at TMZ. They're doing great work up on Capitol Hill. I did not mean to say that he had all these crews running everywhere when I guess he only does have a couple of guys. So there is that. And I also want to thank Dan Pfeiffer and the guys over at Pod Save America. Always really appreciate when Dan comes on. It's been a while since he's come on. So I want to thank him for that as well. A couple other quick plugs. One is we have this great new newsletter, guys. It has been doing gangbusters on Substack. We're noticing people picking up on it on YouTube, even though YouTube is not traditionally a place you go to get a newsletter. But if you're a paid subscriber, you can get immediate access to our brand new newsletter at YouTube posts and on Substack, as written by our terrific new addition to the team, Tommy Christopher. And so check that out. It's hitting your inboxes every day. Open it up, take a look. It's usually got, it always has a fantastic wrap-up summary of all of the news that you might have missed over the last 12 to 24 hours. And it's just right there in your inbox, and you're up to speed. You are caught up on everything that's going on. And so when you run into your MAGA relatives or your far right TPUSA people who are spouting if you're watching Aaron Rodgers say crazy shit on ESPN, you have the facts. You have some snappy retorts that you can go back at him with. And you can see some of the coverage that we're doing. Tommy also wraps up some of the pieces and some of the podcast interviews that we do on the show every day. So check it all out. It's been great. And we're really proud of this next phase of this venture into the world of independent media. And we're very clean over here, by the way. I don't know. I just finished my laundry. The warm water cycle, and it was the spin dry. The spin dry was just chef's kiss. We're very clean over here. The guys behind the scenes always extremely clean, unlike Donald Trump. But in the meantime, just want to say thanks to everybody who's been checking out the newsletter each and every day. Really appreciate it. But in the meantime, still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. I'll see you next time.